Hi, thank you there for the introduction, Yaz. I'm Sam Nazarko. I'm a 19-year-old student studying at King's. You've pretty much heard the rest, so I'll get started. So what I'm going to look at today is why the Raspberry Pi is a good media center. Some of the features, such as what you can get out of it, obviously how to install and set it up, and just generally how to get around and use it. Most of the latter part of how to use it is mainly explored on your own, but I'll start you off with the basics. Okay, so the Raspberry Pi is a good device for a media center because, first and foremost, it's affordable and it's widely available. You can buy one in pretty much any region and get it within a couple of days. It's got very low power consumption, so you can probably run one for about £5 a year in the UK. I'm not sure what that would be in other countries. It's got other uses as well, so you just have to swap the SD card, and you don't have to use it for a media center only. You can use it for education, or it's got a wide variety of applications, and it's a good toy to have a play with. And it's really easy to set up, as we'll see. It's just a couple of clicks and you're done. And if anything goes wrong, which I'll cover, it's really easy to get back to square one. Okay. There's also the fact that it's a very small form factor. It's literally credit card sized. You can put it behind your TV and you won't even think it's there. And lastly, it helps a good cause because the Raspberry Pi Foundation are getting money, and they can use it to fund an educational mission which is intended to increase uptake in computer science in schools, which is quite important. Okay, so Raspbmc is basically a special version or distribution of Linux that runs media center software on your Raspberry Pi. So on the Raspberry Pi, there are various distributions for different purposes. The educational one is known as Raspbian. So because Raspbmc is sort of based off that's how it's named. And the media center software is XBMC. So it's Debian Linux and XBMC. So the project started in February 2012, and I finished it to a final level in February 2013, just over a year later. But it still gets updates every month. I think its last update was about 4 days ago, so it's still well maintained. And the purpose of the project is just to provide a completely free and open source media center platform and make it as simple to use as possible, but at the same time, as you'll see when I look at the features in a moment, make it quite flexible. So make it expandable and allow the user to do a lot with it, although not require them to have a high level of foreknowledge. So let's have a look at what it can do. So it can play back full HD content. You can control Raspbmc with your TV remote. So you could plug in Raspbmc and you'd be able to control your Pi with your existing remote. And this is done via HDMI with a feature called Consumer Electronic Control. It doesn't work with all TVs, but it works with most modern TVs. Obviously, you can play back content from a server, or if you want to plug a USB hard drive into the Pi, or even AirPlay from an iPad or a MacBook. So that's quite good. There's a PVR service as well. So you can watch live TV, you can schedule recordings. That does require either a satellite connection or a cable connection, or you need to connect it to get your local broadcasts. And there are file sharing services like SAM server, FTP, so you can upload files and transfer them between. There are other features. So there's a torrent client, there's a newsgroup downloader, there's support for high-quality sound cards, so either via USB or I2F. And that's particularly useful because if you don't want audio output via the HDMI and perhaps you want to use an optical out, then you can just plug in a USB sound card and you're good to go. So the Pi will automatically update itself as well. You just reboot and you get new features. So that's pretty cool. You don't need any knowledge of Linux. It takes 5 minutes to set it up from a Windows PC, a Mac, or a Linux system, which is really good. There are some more interesting features as well. I'm not sure how well you can see it, but here we've got something called like an Ambilight-like implementation. Philips have a range of televisions where there is a backlight behind the TV which lights up the wall so that it matches the colors on the TV. If you get some LEDs and you rig it up, Raspbmc can do that. So you can put them behind your TV and you can have this effect. There's also a nanny cam feature. So if you have a Pi camera, you can attach it, tell it how often you want it to take a photo, and it'll take a photo, and you can keep an eye on a kid's or a fish tank or something like that. And a very new feature, which is still experimental, is a web browser. So you'll be able to go on Facebook or YouTube or something like that. So, I mean, that's quite experimental, but it's a new feature, and it's just a sign that I'm always adding more stuff. Okay. This is one of my favorite features, really, was someone, well, not a feature, but application. Someone put Raspbmc in a car for their toddler, and it's caught on quite a bit now. And it just shows, really, that Raspbmc is simple enough that this can be done, but it's still got that level of flexibility that there is no single application, and you can find it in a wide variety of places. Okay, so let's talk about setting up. So, obviously you need a Raspberry Pi. There are two models. There's the Model A, which has a single USB port, and it doesn't have an Ethernet connection. And then there's the Model B, which has that extra USB port and an Ethernet connector on it. The one you'll only want the Model B if you plan on using a wired network connection. I recommend it if you're streaming HD content. There's not much of a difference in the price. The difference between the two models is primarily power consumption. It's not a great amount, but the Model A is more tailored towards battery-based appliances, so it doesn't really apply here. So I'd recommend the Model B. Now, in terms of SD cards, they're not all the same. Size isn't too important. You just need a 4 gig card and everything's fine. As for the class rating, if you have a look at an SD card, you'll notice there's a little circle with a number in it. That goes all the way from 2, well, it goes 2, 4, 6, and 10. 2 being a write throughput, of 2 megabytes per second, and 10 is obviously going to be faster. So 10's your fastest. I'd recommend class 6 or better cards, so class 6 or class 10, because with lower rated cards you will notice slower boot up times, slower navigation of menus, and it really does make a difference. They're not really any different in price, really, so it's definitely worth getting a good quality card. It is possible to install Raspbmc on a USB stick, so the SD card still boots the Pi because, well, we can't change that. But then the actual file system's stored on a USB. Some people have reported really boosted performance with this. They attach a USB 3 drive. Even though the Pi supports USB 2, it allows the Pi to fully saturate the speed of USB because some USB 2 sticks are not able to do that. So USB install is an option. Even a mechanical hard drive will work, and there's no additional steps that need to be done for this. It's just ticking a box, as we'll see. The power supply is very, very important here. Although the Pi just needs a standard micro USB charger, with XBMC, which is quite intense on the device itself, you'll notice lag or blackouts if the power isn't sufficient. A lot of power supplies say 1 amp or 2 amp at 5 volts, but they don't actually deliver this current. And if you check out the actual current with if you check on a multimeter, you will see that the voltage delivered is a lot lower. And that's mainly because the power supplies it's an unregulated market, and their original purpose is to just charge phones. So obviously when they're put into a different application, they don't perform too well. So it's definitely worth investing in a good power supply. Don't just power off the TV because if your TV has a USB port, because the USB specification actually does not provide enough output for you to have a stable system. The HDMI cable can make a difference if you're using CEC. As I explained earlier, it's possible for you to control your TV, control Raspbmc using your TV remote. And you'll need an HDMI 1.3 or later cable for that. So that's something to consider. In terms of remote, you can use a keyboard or even a mouse, or as I said, your TV remote possibly. There are various remotes available. If you even go on Amazon and type in Raspbmc remote, I think you'll find some. But also you can control XBMC with your smartphone, so there's definitely applications for it on the Google Play and App Store. So iOS and Android are covered. And I'm sure Windows Phone is as well. And you'll want to form a network connection, really, to have a good experience. So obviously on the Model A, that's got to be Wi-Fi. But on your Model B, you can use Ethernet. Okay. Right, so as I said, installing only takes a couple of minutes. Installation is kind of a two-step process. So we prep the SD card on the computer. We put the SD card into the Pi, boot it, and then the Pi will set itself up on the SD card. So it'll format the partitions, resize them. So it uses the full size of your card and sets itself up. What that means is that you have to do as little as possible on the computer side, and everything's automated. If anything goes wrong, you can just follow this reinstallation process as many times as you want. So it's definitely worth having a play. Okay. To install on Windows, you just head over to raspbmc.com, download, choose Windows, and you just need Windows 2000 or later and an SD card reader. You'll need to be an administrator on your computer, but that shouldn't be a problem. Okay, so, oopsie, hang on, let me just change. Okay, so it'll look something like this. So where you see ID and volume, that'll show any SD card that's connected. It'll also show USB drives, so you may want to remove any drives you have connected to avoid the chance of writing to the wrong drive. But the volume and device name will show, so that it should be pretty obvious. All you have to do is accept the license agreement, which is just the GPL agreement. It's just an open source license. And if you want to install Raspberry to a USB drive, you just tick that box. You don't need to attach the USB to your computer. Once you boot the Raspberry Pi will look for the USB drive and set that up. It won't need to be connected to this computer at any point. You could set up custom networking. So if you tick the manually configure networking box, you'll be asked to, if you want to set up, say, Wi-Fi access details or a static IP address, and you can install Raspbmc to an NFS share, although that's a little out of the scope of Webcast. Okay. To install on Mac or Linux, again, you just need 10.5 or later, OS X, and a fairly modern Linux distribution. The requirements aren't too rigid. You head to the download page again and just select Mac OS X or Linux. The installer is slightly less pretty on this side, but nonetheless, if you follow the instructions to just run the Python script, as you can see in this screenshot here, you'll see a list of devices. So you want to look out for the right size. So if I had a 16 gig card here, you'd see it'd be SDA1, and you just type the device name, and you'll be taken through the same setup steps that you saw on the, if I can go back, on the Windows side. The difference being that instead of you being able to click it, you'll just be prompted at each stage, do you want to install to a USB drive? Do you want to configure networking, etc.? So you can set up in the same way, and you can have the same features. So now you just need to connect your power supply, your video cable, your network connection, other peripherals, and power it up. You don't have to use HDMI. You can use a composite cable. Obviously, it will be a lower resolution, but the Pi will automatically detect this, and it will output to the right video output. And you'll see something like this at first. So it will connect to the internet, and it will download the latest version of Raspbmc. You don't even have to worry if you have an old installer on your computer, because this process always makes sure that you get the latest version. So it'll install. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes, but it's completely automated, so you can walk away, have a coffee or whatever. And when you come back, you'll see something like this. So this is the XBMC interface. So as you can see, we've got some sub-menus of videos, music, programs. But the first step is to make sure we've got a way of controlling it, as I said. So keyboard, USB remote, a smartphone, or a TV remote. So from the home screen, we have a few sub-menus. So we've got videos, music, TV shows, programs, and settings. You can generally just explore these menus to get an idea of how to navigate XBMC. But what I'm going to cover is how to change a few settings. So with settings, there are two slightly different types of settings. So there's XBMC settings, such as your time zone, your keyboard layout, your screensaver, and then there are actual Raspbmc settings, such as whether to update, enabling features like your torrent client, or changing network settings. And they're found in two slightly different places. So to change XBMC settings is just as simple as going to the system menu and selecting settings. And to change Raspbmc settings, if you go to the Programs menu, you'll see this little icon here that says Raspbmc Settings, and you just open that. The settings are well explained, so I won't go into depth there because it's quite easy to see what needs to be changed. So yeah, I mean, you best explore these on your own. But the good thing is that it's not really necessary. I mean, once it's installed, you're ready to go, and these settings should be considered an option. So as I said before, they're more of an option for flexibility, but you don't really need much knowledge to get started. Of course, there's FAQ at raspbmc.com. I think it's raspbmc.com/FAQ, and that will cover a lot of beginner questions that you might have. Okay, right. So now we're set up, we need to actually have something to play or something to watch. So I'm going to take you through a simple example, which is where we just add BBC iPlayer to Raspbmc. BBC iPlayer is a popular streaming service in the UK, so anything that's shown on the BBC gets added to iPlayer for a period of time, and you can catch up on it. It's just a catch-up service, really. It's quite popular in the UK. So as it comes, Raspbmc doesn't have this feature, but as it's expandable, you can install it via an add-on. So we'll look at how we install add-ons. Okay, so an add-on can be installed in XBMC in two ways. There's either a standard repository, which XBMC maintain, and it has a list of some add-ons. So if you explore it, you'll find some basic add-ons like a YouTube add-on, but it doesn't have everything. And some add-ons just come in a zip file. You download the zip file and you install it. So to install an add-on via XBMC's repository, you just go to System, Settings, Add-ons, select Get Add-ons, and then you can choose the XBMC add-ons list. There are various add-ons available, such as skins to make XBMC look different. You've got different video add-ons. There are some add-ons that get you subtitles for content you might have, so it'll look up subtitle files online in case you don't have any. But yeah, you best look for yourself, really. You'll find something you like. So here, for example, I'd be installing a skin called Aeon Nox, and that would make XBMC look different. So once I've selected the add-on, I just need to click Install here. And then the download progress is shown on screen, and then after it's installed, in this case of a skin, you'll be asked if you want to switch to it, because XBMC needs to be restarted to show you the new look. But generally, the add-on will just appear in the relevant section. I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. Okay. And now, as I said before, you can't get every add-on in the XBMC repository. So we can either upload a zip file that has this add-on directly, or upload a zip file that adds more repositories. If we upload a zip file that has more repositories, we can follow this previous process of just System, Settings, Add-ons, Get Add-ons, and then instead of choose xbmc.org add-ons, we'd pick the repository that we've just added. So let's look at manually uploading add-ons. So the first thing we want to do is find this add-on. They're not too hard to find. I think if you just went on Google and typed in BBC iPlayer XBMC add-on, you'd find it within the first two results. There are various other add-ons like 4 on Demand, ITV Player, etc. So there's also various communities that collate these add-ons, so they shouldn't be too hard to find. the first thing we need to do is we need to be able to upload these files to the Raspberry Pi. And the quickest way would just be to turn on the FTP server. So we'd go into Raspbmc settings, which, as I said before, you'll find on the Programs menu. So Programs, Raspbmc settings. Then there's a tab called System Configuration. If you scroll through it, you'll see various services, such as your newsgroup downloader, your torrent client, and your FTP server. So you check FTP server, click OK, and the server will be running. And then you can upload the zip file via FTP. The username is Pi and the password is Raspberry, which is the same as the Raspbian distribution if anyone's used it. I won't exactly cover how to use an FTP client in this webcast, but for most users, I suspect using Windows, if you just Google WinSCP, that's a good FTP client, and you literally just need to type in the IP address of the Raspberry Pi and this username and password. You can get the IP address is actually displayed every time Raspbmc boots in the lower right corner. It will say Raspbmc network detected. So you enter those details and you'll be able to upload the file. Okay, so, also, sorry, for Mac users, I recommend CyberDuck for an FTP client. But generally, you can just Google FTP client and your platform to find one. So, after I've uploaded my add-on zip file, be sure not to extract it on your computer, just upload the complete zip file. I now go into XBMC. I go to System, Settings, Add-ons again, as if we were going to install via the XBMC repository. But instead of selecting Get Add-ons, I'll select Install from Zip File. And then I just need to find the zip file. And provided you haven't changed the directory you're in, and you've just dragged and dropped the zip file, it will be within Home Pi. So as you can see in this screenshot, which is a little bit blurry, this iPlayer zip file, I would select that, I'd click OK, and iPlayer would be available. So I'd find it under the video section. Obviously, that's because iPlayer is a video add-on. If I installed a music add-on, I'd find it under music. So add-ons appear under their relevant sections. If I installed something such as the subtitles add-on, I'd find that under the Programs menu, where you find Raspbmc settings, but it wouldn't be underneath Programs menu. You'd have to go into the menu. Okay. So just some general add-on advice. Some add-ons break. If BBC changed their iPlayer API, then the add-on would obviously break, and whoever is maintaining it would have to fix this. Most times an add-on breaks is due to API changes, and it gets fixed, but it takes a little bit of time, like a couple of days. And the best place for support for an add-on is not the XBMC forum per se or the Raspbmc website, but to contact the add-on maintainer themselves. They generally leave contact information in the description of the add-on as you install it. If not, it's generally quite easy to find out. It will be the source you downloaded it from. Okay. Playing back content you have. Okay, so we haven't really touched on that yet, but it's really, really easy. There's a library mode as well, so all your music or your video will automatically download information pertaining to that. So your TV episode information, it can download a screenshot, well, a capture of part of the episode, a description of what happens, just a general, like, it's generally a guide. Likewise for music, XBMC will automatically download artist information, the album cover, etc. It does rely on your media being well named, but it's generally quite accurate with its scraping. So there are a couple of ways you can play back content. Aside from, say, AirPlay or UPnP, there's network streaming, and there's just plugging a USB drive in the back of the Pi and playing it that way. Both are good, but they have their own use cases. So with network streaming, you can obviously stream a centralized media collection to several devices. So you could have a file server, and that could stream to stream to several Pis. If you just had your USB drive in one Pi, obviously only one Pi can access it at a time, unless you enable the Samba server, but you won't have great performance, and you'll have to ensure that Pi is always on. If you're going for library mode, you can share that across multiple devices. So one advantage of library mode is you can track where you are with what films you've seen or what episodes you've seen. XBMC will just put a tick next to the episode. You can have this shared across multiple devices. So if you watch something in the living room and then you go to bed and you want to remember where you were, you can resume it from the exact second, which is pretty cool. That's done with MySQL, and although it's a bit beyond the scope of this webcast, I do cover it in the book. It's easier to back up content if you've got it on a file server as well. You've just got to back up off one device, but if you've got various USB drives or several Pis with different libraries, you'll have to remember to back them all up. There are disadvantages though. If you only want one Pi to watch TV, it doesn't make sense to have another computer on just to stream from it, because obviously that's going to take more energy consumption. You're going to have to maintain that computer, and there's also a central point of failure. If all your Pis, or if you rely on content all from one device, and that fails, you're going to have a problem. Okay. I see questions coming in. I will answer them shortly. Right. So to configure network shares, it's a little bit too much for this webcast, because it does depend on your platform, whether you're running Mac OS X or Linux or Windows. But I'll assume most people are Windows users. Sharing a folder is quite simple. It's as simple as right-clicking on it, selecting the Sharing tab in Windows and giving it a name. And provided you have the IP address or the name of the computer, it's really easy to find it on the network. Raspbmc can browse network shares. It can automatically detect them, but this isn't 100% reliable with the fantastic advent of Windows 8. So we add sources, and a source is just a definition to XBMC of where our content is, and it lets us play stuff back. Okay, so first we want to enter, to set up a source, we want to enter the relevant section for the type of source. So if we're adding a video source, we go into videos. If we're adding music, we go into music. Now we select the files menu. And if you're using a USB drive, your files are, if you just plug the USB drive in, your files are already there. You don't actually need to add a source, because Raspbmc has automatically detected it. The only reason you might want to is if you want a library mode where you're automatically scraping information. But otherwise we'd click Add Videos or Add Music. And then we'll see something like this. So we just click Browse, and we'd select Add Network Location. And then you can select the type of network you're trying to access. So you've got SMB for Windows, typically, ASP for OS X, typically. But of course, you can add other sources like FTP or HTTP or even UPnP. It's a wide variety of network streaming protocols that are supported. But as I say, the default in Windows, and I suspect most users, is SMB. So you'd fill out the connection details. Let's see if I can. So in this example, I've put my IP address, the folder's name, which would be Sam's TV, username of Sam, and a password. You'll notice I use the IP address of my computer and not the host name, which would be something like Sam PC. And it's generally more reliable to just use the IP address because host name resolution isn't a given depending on your network configuration. So it's a good idea to set a static IP of the device you're going to stream content from. Using an IP is definitely more reliable. So I'd then click OK, and my source would appear here. So my share would appear. And then I'd click OK again, and it's shown up as an option. Okay, so I've foolishly in this screenshot added home Pi as an option, not my share. But as you can see here, I've got a list going now, and I could go to Add again and Browse and go through the whole procedure again. What this would let me do is add multiple sources as a single one, which is quite useful. If I had, say, maybe 2 hard drives, and so 2 different shares on the network, I could combine them as one. So I wouldn't have to think, oh, is that on drive 1 or is that on drive 2? XBMC would just show me the contents of both drives in a single listing. And you can just keep doing that, which is nice. You can mix protocols as well. As I've said, this can be repeated. And we'd click OK, and it would be there. So the other reason for sources, apart from just adding, making files known to XBMC, as I said, is library mode, which will automatically scrape content, and other features such as pin code locking. So I don't know, I've seen instances where people might want to separate cartoons from maybe horror films, and you can set a pin code, and if the code's wrong, they can't get access to the folder. So that's that. But then once you've done this, you just need to go into your videos or music section, and you'll see the source, and you can play content. And that's pretty much it. Just a few tips before I get on to questions is make sure you just reboot at least once a month to get some updates. If anything goes wrong, you can either go into Raspbmc settings, go to nightly builds and select factory restore, or you can just follow the same installation process I showed you earlier, and it will just overwrite the card. There's no real risk because you can't brick a Raspberry Pi. You can't even brick the SD card. If anything goes wrong, you're just about 5 minutes away from resetting up the card. So there's definitely have a go and mess with it. But yeah, go and explore. So thanks for watching. I'm going to answer some questions in a second. We've got a Facebook page. I have Twitter, and this is probably the most resourceful link. There's a forum here, and this is a community-led forum, although I do spend an awful lot of time reading the posts on it and helping out. And if you have any problems, you'll definitely get help here. There's a Raspbmc forum, and it's full of wonderful people that love to help. So yeah. There's also the FAQ at raspbmc.com/FAQ, but should you have any problems, these are some good links to help you out. So I'll take a look at the questions now. Hang on. Okay, I'm not sure about the order here. Okay. So someone says, will Netflix not work because of Silverlight? Yes and no. Silverlight on Linux is not possible. Unfortunately, although Netflix are considering HTML5, they're not going to have an open source method of playback. They're waiting to switch to HTML5 once they're certain that it supports DRM. I have an idea around this. It's not pretty at the moment, but I have seen Netflix running on Raspbmc. It involves another computer, unfortunately, and it sort of streams it over, but it does work. I think I could get it going very soon, but no promises anyway. It is a very highly requested feature, though, so I'm aware that people really want Netflix on the Raspberry Pi. I think we'll get there. Okay. Someone is considering a Raspberry Pi setup to provide the same stereo track to 20 or 50 people. Will it serve that many handhelds all on the same Wi-Fi LAN? I assume you mean, can you have, do you mean, yeah, are you asking if you can have 20 to 50 Raspberry Pis on the same network? Or, because I'm not sure how Raspbmc could serve that many handhelds. There's only one HDMI out and one analog audio out, so that's, if you could possibly clarify that one. And then someone asks, where is the wiring scheme of the, I don't quite understand the next question either. Okay, here's one. Is the difference between the Pi A and B models that one has an Ethernet and the other does not? Yes. The Model A also has one less USB port, so the Model B has two, the Model A has one. The Pi Model A, as a result, has a lower power consumption. It's negligible in terms of it being plugged in, but it's useful if you were going to power it off batteries. So I recommend the Model B. Okay. Can you use USB HDTV tuners via the Pi's USB port? Yes. Depending on your region, provided that you have over-the-air channels that aren't encrypted, you can indeed use a TV tuner. You can use cable, you can use DVB-T, so terrestrial, you can use satellite, various other devices like HD Home Run. And someone actually asked, can I have an HD Home Run, can I record live TV? You can indeed. People have had success with the HD Home Run before. I've got support for it in at the moment. It's as simple as attaching your HD Home Run, having it on the network, and you can create a configuration file and Raspbmc will detect it. It's not completely necessary for just watching live TV, but if you want to be able to schedule recordings, you can indeed do that. If you actually search our forum for HD Home Run, you'll find various users that have done this. Does Raspbmc support the MKV format? Yes, Yes, it does. It supports up to, well, MKV is a container, so, but it also playback 1080p H.264 in an MKV container without issue. Up to profile level 4.2, I believe. It won't play 10-bit, however. Can Raspbmc handle photos of 1,020 megabyte JPEG and CR2 RAW files? I'd say your limitation there isn't the amount of files. I'd say it would be potentially the resolution. It's worth a try. I don't see why you'd have a problem because Raspbmc won't load all the files at once, so it should be able to do that. Can Raspbmc be configured as a Slingbox client? I've not looked at this. I've not looked at this at all. I will have a look though. Could I use Raspbmc instead of OpenMax Player to do video looping? You could, but I think Raspbmc is maybe not streamlined enough for that. I think if you want to just loop a video, you should use OpenMax Player, perhaps a startup script that just sets up your loop, because otherwise you'll need to either loop XBMC or have to write a couple of Python scripts to do that. If you've got the OpenMax implementation working already, it's probably best to stay with that. Is there an Android app to remote control or manage Raspbmc? Yep, there are plenty. So we've got the official XBMC one, which is pretty cool. It has features like if you get a text message and you're watching TV, it can appear on the TV. That's either very good or very bad. There's a very nice one called Yahtzee. It's really lightweight. It's good for library mode. And in terms of iOS, I know you're asking about Android, but I'll mention it anyway. Constellation is very, very nice if you have a lot of artwork. It's really good. Okay, next questions. Is Chromecast on its way? Something that's like Chromecast is on its way. I'm working on something where you're basically able to send anything on your desktop on a Mac or on Windows or on Linux straight to Raspbmc. And it will get around the whole will Netflix work or will XYZ plugin work, because it won't matter if they've got an API or they've got DRM. It will just go straight over. It's Chromecast-like, but it's not officially Chromecast. I mean, I'm going to go for a browser plugin where you can just click an icon. It'll detect any Raspbmc systems that are on and send it over, but it won't be Chromecast officially. Can you add or embed streaming services if there is no add-on? As I just said, really, you should be able to stream it from a desktop, but it might be worth having a chat with these guys and asking if they want to do an XBMC add-on, or seeing if someone in the community is interested in it. So, yeah, I mean, if there's demand for this service, something will probably appear. Okay. Will iPlayer add-on do downloads of programs as opposed to streaming? There is add-on that will download iPlayer programs. Its name escapes me, but for the one I showed you now just streams. I'm not completely convinced on the legality of downloading the program. So, yeah, I mean, the one I've showed you will stream. You'll have to look up downloads. Okay. Okay, you've clarified your question about the 20 to 50. Okay, 20 to 50 smartphones running an XBMC I think I see what you're saying. XBMC isn't a server. per se. You could enable the Samba server or the FTP server that I discussed earlier and stream it to your 20 smartphones or so. Over Wi-Fi, I wouldn't do it for throughput issues, but over a network, I don't see why it would be a problem, really. Let's just refresh. What is the best file system for a USB hard drive? What are the performance implications? Okay, that's a good question. First of all, it depends what you define as a USB hard drive, because you've got mechanical, obviously, and then you've got flash. So in terms of mechanical, Extended 4 is a good file system. It's well supported in Linux. Your downside is that you can't connect it to a Windows computer and just transfer files. If you want to do that, I recommend exFAT. It hasn't got the FAT32 limitation of 4 gig. It's pretty fast. It's quite reliable. If you're talking about a USB flash drive that you, again, want to put content on, I suggest the same. In terms of Raspbmc, if you have a USB-based install where the actual OS is on a USB drive, Extended 4 is used at the moment. However, I plan to move to F2FS for flash-based USB media and stick with Extended 4 for mechanical drives. F2FS, which is now used by default on the SD cards as of a few days ago in this month's update, is very, very fast. It's a new file system developed by a Samsung employee, and it's optimized to run on flash media. Is Raspbmc always current with the latest version of XBMC? Yep. Whenever a new build comes out, say when Frodo came out in, it escapes me. Well, when it comes out, we're normally probably about 2 hours behind on compiling and uploading the new build. There's also 24-hour nightly builds of Gotham, which is going to be the new version. It's currently in Alpha 9, I think. That's XBMC 13. So there's 24-hour builds of that, although because Raspbmc applies patches, there's sometimes a few days where you don't get a nightly build. But I generally keep tabs on that, and I update the patches when necessary. So you're looking at pretty much a build a day for the new version, and if something changes in Frodo, that's out instantly. I backport various fixes as well, so it's very current. And that looks like it in terms of questions.
No additional questions have come in. So, folks, we are going to wrap up the webcast in just a moment here. Sam, is there anything additional that you would like to leave the audience with today?
Not really. I'd just say try it out and see how it goes.
Perfect. With that, folks, we're going to say a very big thank you to Sam for spending time with us today and for sharing all his knowledge and expertise. Thank you, Sam. Folks that attended our webcast, thank you so much. And we did have people from all over the world. So for those of you that stayed up late or got up early, we thank you for that. And a big thank you to those of you that sent in your questions, because having your questions really adds so much to our webcast. So we thank you for that. Also like to let you know, if you didn't open your group chat, please do before you leave. We did push out some details to you on Sam's book. You can get that book today. It is the O'Reilly Deal of the Day. We have a great price for you as a thank you for attending the event. Raspberry Pi Media Center book. Lots of good information there. Plenty more tips to help you with your project. So we do encourage you to take advantage of the discount and get the book. Also, you can visit O'Reilly.com. Look on the right-hand side. It's right there. You can't miss it. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, everyone. This will conclude today's webcast. Goodbye, everybody.